So we're in a series called A Journey to Meaning. And in this series, we're looking at what it takes to have this thing called meaning in our lives. You might be at, a place in your life where you think, man, I'm older, a little bit late for me to get started. I'll start praying for someone else to have meaning or whatever. But here's what God wants you to hear. He wants you to hear that no matter where you are, no matter what you've done, even if you've, seemingly have disqualified yourself from meaning in your life because you think that you've done so much wrong, or you've outgrown the opportunity to have meaning in your life because, you're 98 years old, that's not the truth. If you have blood pumping in your body, if you've got air moving in and out of your lungs, you have an opportunity to have meaning in your life. And so, how do you know if you have meaning? And one of the best ways for you to be able to look at your life and know, do I have meaning in my life, is to look at your life and say, all right, does my passion and desire to do something that is meaningful outweigh the pain that I've experienced in life? And if you're stuck in your pain, if you're stuck in the struggles and problems or things that someone did to you, maybe you were a victim when you were young, maybe life happened and maybe life happened over and over and over and you just haven't been able to move forward after all of that pain and struggle, you are lacking that meaning in your life. And so that's what this series is about, is trying to help you get onto that journey, get onto that moving forward in your life that you need. So today what I want to talk with you about is sowing with meaning. Sowing with meaning. And I'm not talking about getting out the sewing machine. I'm talking about spreading the good things that you have to offer in this world. So here's what we'll start with. What you are willing to do, the measures you are willing to sow, determines the measure of meaning that you will reap. Little sowing equals little meaning. Big sowing equals reaping big meaning. This is a spiritual principle. This is one of those laws of the kingdom of heaven. This is something that God established and said, if you sow little, you reap little. If you sow big, you reap big. And God put examples of this all throughout the earth. He said, if you sow into the fields, you will reap a harvest based upon how many seeds you sowed. So we're surrounded by this. It's a spiritual principle just as much as we see it in planet Earth. Our flesh, we want big meaning with minimal measures of sowing, though. Am I alone? We want to get big results for as little as we can do, or as little as we can sacrifice, or as little as we can invest. It would be great if today, suddenly, without any kind of investment, without any kind of effort, without any kind of long-term sacrifice of any sort, that we could just say something that would change the world. Wouldn't you love to be able to just get on Facebook and say one word or one statement, and the whole world just goes, oh, that makes sense. I got it now. And we just change the world with it. But that doesn't happen. It doesn't work that way. Why? Because to influence the world, to be of any kind of lasting, making a difference, a meaningful difference, you have to have a story. And you have to have a long-term history of preparation. You have to have a serious sacrifice of some sort. You have to have great perseverance that people are able to look on before they respect what you say, before they accept what you say. Here's what I mean. Maybe you've heard of the sermon, Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God. Have you ever heard of that? Jonathan Edwards preached this way back in 1741. He preached this sermon, and they said that he got up and he preached this sermon just with a very monotone voice. He basically stood there and read this sermon, Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God. And while he was reading it, people just began falling to their knees, weeping and repenting, and a huge revival broke out because of this very monotone sermon. Now, if you had a 20-year-old who could get his hands on it, and it's available, you can go read it on the internet today, Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God. You can Google it and you can find it. If you had a 20-year-old that hasn't experienced anything in life that's really significant and just kind of barely, experienced life at this point, to get up and just begin reading this sermon without any kind of perseverance, without any kind of history of influence in his life, and he just reads it, how many of you know he's not going to have the same results Jonathan Edwards had that day? Why? Because people are like, he doesn't even know what he's talking about. He's just reading it. He's not experienced any of this. But because of who Jonathan Edwards was, because of what he's experienced in life, because of all of the struggles and difficulties and his perseverance in life and the anointing that God planted through him into this crowd of people, something great and life-changing happened. You see, meaningful measures yield great meaning to your life. And your perseverance, your overcoming problems and struggles and all of that in so many ways is a meaningful measure in your life. And sowing greatly into this world, what God has given you to sow, gives you a great harvest. One day, Jesus was talking about sowing good seeds from our lives. And he talked about how a farmer sowed a lot of seed. And he said that this farmer, as he was spreading seed, he just spread it generously everywhere. He would sow it into the hard places. And the hard places were where people had trampled, people had stepped, and the ground was too hard for the seed to get down into. And the birds just came and they picked up the seed and they ate it. And he talked about how he sowed in the rocky places, and that is there were rocks like under the surface of the ground, and how the seeds would go into the ground just enough that they would sprout up quickly, but the roots could not get past the rocks. So although they sprouted quickly, the sun came out and they scorched it really fast because they didn't have roots down deep inside that could pull up enough moisture into them. And he said some of them fell also among the thorns, and as the thorns grew up, they choked out the good seed that had grown up. And so Jesus talked about those three different types of things, places that the seeds would fall. And why would they fall there? All because the farmer went out and sowed without sparing. He sowed generously into the field. And so what did Jesus say? He said, still other seed fell on good soil. It came up, grew, and produced a crop, some multiplying 30, some 60, and some 100 times. He's saying, this guy went out and he just threw seed everywhere. And some of it is going to land in places that it's not going to grow. But the stuff that lands in good places, he said, it produced a massive crop. And that's what the kingdom of heaven is about, Jesus said. And he went on to explain as he was talking about the farmer. And he was saying the farmer is like you and me, sowing seeds into the world of his story. How many of you know this whole thing is his story? You're a part of his story. Your name is going to go down as part of God's story. I know we're in second service. You guys can do better than this. Your name is going to be written down in God's story. He's keeping records of his story with you in it. That's awesome. You get to be a part of it. And however you sow into his kingdom and into this world from his kingdom to be able to provide and help for other people with what you have, he takes note of that, and it's going to be a part of your story with his. Sharing good things, sharing Christ, telling people about Jesus. It's so interesting that Jesus gave us a picture of this farmer going out everywhere, sowing without restraint. In other words, he was sowing with great measure. And how many of you know when you sow with great measure, you will reap with great measure? And Jesus said that even though the farmer sowed in places the seed wouldn't even grow, he still got a harvest that was so big that it was worth just sowing seed anywhere he went. And Jesus talked about how that's what it looks like for us. What's he saying? He's saying, sow sparingly, reap sparingly. Do you ration yourself off? Now think about this. With your spouse, does your spouse get the crumbs from your table? Or do they get all of you? Do they get your best? What about your church family? Well, I've got some crumbs for you, church family. Here's a little bit. Or do we get your best? What about your friends? Do they get just enough? Keep them wanting more? Or do they get your love? Do they get to talk with you? Sow sparingly, reap sparingly. Just a few verses later, he says this. Consider carefully what you hear, he continued. With the measure you use, it will be measured to you, and even more. With the measure you use, it will be measured to you. But then I love this. But I'll give you more. That's good. I'm not talking about having success. Meaning is more than success. You can have success without meaning. And you can have meaning without success. So we all want a success story. Wouldn't you like to have a success story? But here's the problem with success. Success is like the seed that falls on the rocky place, where the rock is just a little bit under the dirt, so the seed falls and it quickly grows, but it doesn't take root anywhere. And before you know it, the sun comes out and it scorches. That's success. If you have success because of this particular thing, guess what? Eventually the world's going to get tired of that particular thing. And when the sun comes out, it's just going to burn up. So success is like sowing seed in the rocky places. It's just going to be for a short bit of time. Meaning in your life is way bigger and way more important than success. And so when we find meaning in life, we need to invest our lives into that meaning. You can have meaning without success too. Your life can be full of meaning but go completely unnoticed by the world. Some of the greatest stories that we will read when we get to heaven, in the annals of heaven, we'll read those things and be like, my goodness, why didn't this get shouted from the mountaintops on earth? Some of the greatest stories, the greatest sacrifices, the greatest stories on earth have yet to have been told. Things that only God knows that people have done. Great measures that they were willing to sow. And guess what? When they got to heaven, they reaped a bunch, didn't they? A meaningful life is found in the measures that you sow. And sometimes we sow and sow and sow and sow, and it just seems like we're never going to reap. But we need to remember that God rewards us for sowing, not for reaping. And when you get to heaven, that's when you know you're going to reap. That's when you know He's going to bring good things to you because of it. Hebrews chapter 11 talks about this, and it's a chapter that's full of people who sowed and sowed and sowed. And the scripture says at the end of the chapter that all of these people in Hebrews chapter 11 passed away before they ever saw what was promised to them come to pass. They sowed and sowed and sowed and never reaped here on earth. Why? Because they trusted and believed that it was going to be something that God would provide for them up in heaven. That's huge. And God took their everyday lives, and here we are talking about these people thousands of years later. Why? Because they sowed immeasurably. They had meaning in their life, and some of them thought their lives were absolutely meaningless. And yet God was using them for great meaning because they had given their lives to Him. You see, meaning is more than success. But meaning is also more than just affecting. It's more than just affecting people. A fly can affect people. Even more, a flea can affect people. There are times that I'll be standing up here trying to preach, and a fly is up here affecting me, and it's driving me crazy, and I'm swinging at it, trying to get a communication across to you guys. A fly, things can affect things. And just because you affect somebody, just because you're bothering somebody, or, somebody notices that you're alive, does not mean that your life is full of meaning. I remember in high school, there were a couple of twin guys that they were identical twins, and they also had these two cars that were identical twins. Anybody remember the old Corvairs? Yeah, the ugly car. And these guys, they loved their cars just because it was ugly and unique. You know what I'm saying? And they would come bragging at school about something that they would consistently do at least once a week. On their way home, they would drive down this highway, it was Highway 30 there, and they would drive side by side in their identical Corvairs down this road and doing like 25, 30 miles an hour. And they would back up traffic for hours. It was bad. And they would brag about it like this was the most fun thing that they had to do. Can you imagine? Just because you affect other people does not mean your life is full of meaning. And it's so funny because you stop and think, I wonder how many people went home and became violent in their homes because of these two guys that were just having fun. I wonder how many divorces happened because people went home in a bad mood. These guys affected these other people in great ways, probably greater ways than they imagined. And just because we affect somebody doesn't mean that we have meaning in our life. And so as we do this, here are some questions to consider about what kind of seeds you are sowing in your life. Do you have meaningful passion? What are you passionate about? Is what you're passionate about meaningful? When you get to the end of your life and you look back on it and you see what you have invested, your time, your energy, your wealth, whatever it is that you've done, and you look back and see, what is it? King Solomon, we talked about this a few weeks ago. He looked back on his life after all that he had done, and he said it was meaningless, utterly meaningless. This is ridiculous. I wasted my time. I wasted my energy. I wasted my finances. I wasted all of the wisdom God gave me. Is what you're passionate about really meaningful? And that doesn't mean that we don't do little things to keep our lives moving forward, but what are we really putting our lives into? I can't imagine what it's going to be like for the guys that are searching for Bigfoot at the end of their lives to look back on their lives and go, just kind of fell out. I'm sorry. Bigfoot is out there. So I remember one of the sweetest old men in the church that I grew up in St. Louis. I think his name was Jesse. And every now and then he would bring his stamp collection to church to show. We had a boys group and girls groups on Wednesday nights, and he would come and he would show us his stamps. And I tried to act interested, like, oh, look at this one, Jesse. I was a little kid. I was like, what are we doing with these sticky pieces of paper? This doesn't make sense to me. Why is he so passionate about this? And he had thousands of stamps in his buckets. And then he had, these frames, where these are the important stamps. And I'm sure that they were probably worth something, but we're sitting there going, man, this guy is passionate about this. And as he came near the end of his life, when I was a kid, he would come in and, hey, boys, and he'd show us the stamps. And then he started talking about who might be interested in taking over my stamp collection when I die. And none of us, we're, I don't want that. That seems like a lot of responsibility, And I thought, as I got older, I've thought about it, and I thought, I wonder how much he looked back on his life and realized, man, how many hours and years have I spent collecting sticky pieces of paper that nobody wants? life. And how frustrating it would be to get to the end of your life and realize you've used all the days of your life just throwing rocks in the ocean or collecting sawdust, when all the while you could have true meaning. And here's another question. Are you doing anything that's meaningfully dangerous? There's a lot of dangerous things you could do out there. It seems to me that one of the most useless ways that I could pass away would be driving too fast. That's not meaningfully dangerous. It's fun. I enjoy it, but it's not meaningful. And what a useless way to die. Driving 80 miles an hour down 380. It sounds like fun. When you do something dangerous, are you doing something meaningfully dangerous? Swimming with sharks, that's just stupid. But swimming with sharks to save a child, that has meaning. So looking at our lives and saying, okay, where am I risking my life? What am I risking? Where am I risking relationships? Am I risking something that's based upon meaning, or am I just doing it for a little shot of dopamine to make me feel good for the moment? And when you take a risk, is there meaning involved, or are you just gambling? The greatest meaningful risk, and you can try this if you haven't, but the greatest meaningful risk that a human being can take is to begin to tell someone about Jesus. You want to talk about something that is dangerous, but very meaningful. It's fun, especially when you get to catch somebody for the kingdom. Jesus said, go fishing for men. Listen, I'm talking about a life that is full of adventure. And that's what Jesus was talking about. Come on, our leader got hung on a cross. You want to talk about dangerous? This is a meaningfully dangerous thing that we do. And it's probably why we don't engage in it enough. But I'm telling you, if you're bored in life, start telling people about Jesus. The most happy and exuberant people that I know talk about Jesus all the time. Choosing where to put your passion and choosing what is worth risking your life or reputation for is essential to having meaning in your life. And just living a humdrum life without meaning and purpose, it's going to be difficult, and you're going to be full of struggle that doesn't make sense. But when you have meaning that makes sense of the struggle, that makes sense of any pain in your life, that's huge. The stories in the Bible are full of people like this, and it's compelling to us. Moses, he was an 80-year-old shepherd, and God came to him and said, I want you to go lead people out of Egypt. I want you to go lead my people out of there. He's like, God, I can't do that. I stutter. And God's like, shut up. I told you to go do it. You go read it. God got really mad at Moses in this burning bush situation. God, I'm 80 years old. I've been shepherding for 40 years. I just like doing this. He didn't own anything. He didn't even own the land that he was shepherding on. He was just working for his father-in-law. Moses was pretty much a loser at that point, you know? And God calls him to go and lead the people out of Egypt. Oh, man, I'll probably face that one when I get to heaven. You called Moses a loser. Sorry. Esther, I love the story of Esther. If you haven't read it, oh, man. This beautiful young lady, she struck it rich. She became the queen. And all of a sudden, she has to face the great challenge of, am I going to stand up and protect my people, or am I going to keep silent and just let them all die? This young, beautiful lady. And she had to go and face the king and say, this is what's going on. Are you going to save my people or not? And the king could have just struck her dead. It's dangerous, meaningfully dangerous. Daniel was passionate about his relationship with God, so passionate that he was willing to go and be eaten and mauled by lions. But God saved him. God protected him. It's dangerous to keep that relationship with God at all costs. Paul, the apostle, he was so passionate about his relationship with God. He was willing to risk it all. Every day of his life after he came to Jesus, literally, he faced huge risk all the time. 2 Corinthians chapter 11. I want to talk to you a little bit about him before we go. Paul was contrasting his meaningful, passionate, risky, and dangerous life with the false teachers and preachers that were out there claiming to be apostles. And he wrote to the people about how he was jealous that people were following all of these fake preachers and listening to the garbage that they were telling them. And I understand what Paul was saying here. There are times throughout our ministry that I'm like, gosh, how in the world do these quacks get so many people in their churches? The stuff that they're preaching, you've got to be kidding me. This is ridiculous. There was one group, I told it in the first service. I'll try to not use any names here. But there was a group down in Plano that it was a Christian cult, a pseudo-Christian, I should say, cult that was happening down there. And the police, I talked to a police officer one time. He's like, yeah, we know all the members of that church's names and we follow what's going on in that church because it's a cult. It's like, wow, that's interesting. And here's what would happen. In the services, the pastor would walk up and down the middle aisle. You could see it on TV. You can go to YouTube and find it. He was walking up and down the middle aisle, and the women in the church were dancing around him barefoot. What? And he had people, I was jealous. I was like, you got to be kidding me. We're pretty sane compared to that. You know what I mean? And Paul looked at these people and he's like, how in the world are people going to you? There's no truth in it. There's no truth in it. What is wrong with these people? I'll read it to you. He said, I hope you'll put up with me in a little foolishness. He was kind of aggravated. He said, I'm about to say some foolish things. Yes, please put up with me. I am jealous for you with a godly jealousy. I promised you to one husband, to Christ, so that I might present you as a pure virgin to him. But I'm afraid that just as Eve was deceived by the serpent's cunning, your minds may somehow be led astray from your sincere and pure devotion to Christ. For if someone comes to you and preaches a Jesus other than the Jesus we preached, or if you receive a different spirit from the spirit you received, or a different gospel from the one you accepted, you put up with it easily enough. I do not think I'm in the least inferior to these super apostles. Yeah, he's hilarious. I may indeed be untrained as a speaker, but I do have knowledge. He's saying, I've got a little common sense, and I'm jealous that you guys have put up and listened to these false and fake preachers all this time. And he goes on talking about how he says, I used the money from other churches. And it's pretty funny if you read it. He actually says, I stole money from the other churches. He was being facetious. He's saying, I used the money from these other churches to supply for my needs while I'm here in Corinth so that you guys would see the contrast between me and these fake preachers who are just taking you for everything you got. He says, then some verses later, he challenges the boast of these preachers who are boasting about their attendance, boasting about their beautiful buildings, boasting about how wealthy they've become, boasting about their authority and their power. And he challenges them with his boasts. And he says this, he says, I repeat, let no one take me for a fool. He's saying, what I'm about to say is about as foolish as I'm going to get, but you listen to me and don't take me as a fool. He says, but if you do, then tolerate me just as you would a fool, so that I may do a little boasting. In this self-confident boasting, I'm not talking as the Lord would. He's saying, listen, Jesus wouldn't do this, but I'm going to go ahead and do it because I'm aggravated and irritated. I love it. Verse 18, since many are boasting in the way the world does, I too will boast. He says, since these preachers are boasting the way the world does, all the stuff the world looks at and sees as success and great in the kingdom, he says, this is not the real kingdom. I'm going to boast about some other things. He says, you gladly put up with these fools, since you are so wise. In fact, you even put up with anyone who enslaves you or exploits you or takes advantage of you or puts on airs or slaps you in the face. To my shame, I admit that we too were weak for that. He's saying, I understand. I would love to just be a part of that too. But we have to stick with the truth. Whatever anyone else dares to boast about, I love this. All right, so let's read this the way it writes, all right? So he keeps interrupting himself here, as you can read this, all right? So I'll kind of help you to see it. He says, whatever anyone else dares to boast about. And he interrupts himself and he's like, I'm speaking as a fool. All right, but I'm going to go on. I also dare to boast about it. Are they Hebrews? So am I. Are they servants of Christ? Or he says, are they Israelites? So am I. Are they Abraham's descendants? So am I. Are they servants of Christ? I'm out of my mind to be talking this way. Interrupts himself again. I'm more. I have worked much harder, been imprisoned more frequently, been flogged more severely, and been exposed to death again and again. 5 times I received from the Jews the 40 lashes minus 1. 3 times I was beaten with rods. Once I was pelted with stones. 3 times I was shipwrecked. I spent a night and a day in the open sea. I've been constantly on the move. I've been in danger from rivers, in danger from bandits, in danger from my fellow Jews, in danger from Gentiles, in danger in the city, in danger in the country, in danger at sea, and in danger from false believers. I have labored and toiled and have often gone without sleep. I've known hunger and thirst and have often gone without food. I've been cold and naked. Besides everything else, I face daily the pressures of my concern for all the churches. Who is weak and I do not feel weak? Who is led into sin and I do not inwardly burn? He's saying I get angry when someone gets led into sin. If I must boast, I will boast about the things that show my weakness. Wow. The contrast, he's saying, look at all that I've overcome. I've sown hugely. I have given myself. I have risked with meaningful danger everything in my life to the point of death many times. What a contrast. I love the story of King David. Before he was king, he was just a teenage boy, right? David had a meaningful life of passion as a child. And he was a shepherd boy. And while he was out there shepherding, one day a lion came and was going to kill the sheep. And he grabbed that lion and he tore it apart with his bare hands. That's amazing. Another day, a bear came. Same thing. Killed it with his bare hands. Those experiences prepared him for a moment that the entire world would forever talk about. David and Goliath. David faced and defeated the giant by himself with God's help. But it's important to note that David wasn't just finding just anything to be passionate about in his life. He was finding something meaningful to do with his life. He wasn't placing his emotions and his reputation on a life that didn't matter. He found something that mattered, and he put his emotion and he was willing to take risks and be dangerous with it. And through the years, I've seen people take up causes that weren't causes at all. What are you willing to fight for? Is it truly a cause that's meaningful? Is it about life? Is it about something bigger than you? What's your time, energy, all of your resources, what are they going to? And when we fight for things that aren't meaningful, we make our lives meaningless. What are you fighting for? What are you living for? And when you place your life at risk, is it truly worth dying for? Fighting for someone to love you that doesn't want to love you, that's meaningless. It's time to let someone walk away. If they want to, if they won't choose to love you, let them walk away. Fighting for a job just for money or power, well, that's meaningless. Risking your life for a frivolous moment, a great selfie, a popular video on YouTube. You ever seen those videos or pictures? And they're like, these are the last pictures taken of these people, and they're like hanging off a cliff, or it's just meaningless. But giving your life to someone who does love you, giving all of you to your spouse, not giving crumbs, giving yourself to your friends, your family, your church family, making yourself important. Doing the work to prepare yourself for a meaningful job where you can go and be a missionary. I love talking to Carlos at work. He talks about all the other guys that he's talking about trying to reach for the kingdom. He's a missionary at his work. That's meaning. It's meaning. And when you make these kind of decisions over a period of time in your life, at some point, you will find yourself at that moment like David did, when all of a sudden there's the opportunity, there's the giant, and you've prepared, and that moment is there, and you have persevered, and you have already attacked the lion and the bear, and you know that with God's help, you've got this. David wasn't going towards Goliath just so that he could have a good YouTube video. It was meaningful. James David, would you come? So let me ask you, what are you passionate about? Does your passion align with something that's truly meaningful in life? And what are you doing that's dangerous? Is it really something worth dying for? See, I talk to men and women all day long that are just stuck in the humdrums. Just feel like they're chasing their tail. You know how stupid it is for a dog to chase his own tail? And that's how we feel sometimes. We're just running in circles. Stuck in their job. Stuck in their finances. Stuck with their marriage. Stuck with their kids. Stuck with their parents. But then I talk to others who have the same problems. Stuck in their lives, stuck in their jobs, stuck in their marriage, stuck with their kids, stuck with their parents, stuck with the humdrums. But they're not living in the humdrums. And these are the people that I'm talking about. These are people like you, people of faith, people whose lives have become meaningful no matter what the situation is. that all of those problems are all about something coming together with meaning and purpose and training for that later thing that God has for them. We know it as people of faith. I've been so privileged to be on this adventure, this great adventure with my parents who were here at the first service this morning and here during the worship service. But for 19 years now, I've been on this journey with them. And if you know my parents, if you've met them and got to know them at all, they're not just waiting to die kind of people. I'll never forget, maybe I shouldn't say this, but I'm going to go ahead and just kind of been unhinged this today. My late wife's parents, we were sitting there having dinner with them one night, and they were, I promise you, this really happened. They started talking about their funeral arrangements with our kids and with us, and I was like, what is going on here? At the same time, people of the same age, I'm getting texts from my dad of pictures of boats that he's about to buy. Wants to live, you know what I'm saying? People that want to live, and it's been such a privilege for them to come and join us. And you know, my dad retired in his early 50s. Wouldn't that be nice? And instead of going off and visiting campsites all around the nation and all of that, instead of doing that, they brought their travel trailer here and they parked it and they upgraded over the next 5 years, living here while they're home in St. Louis with a beautiful pond in the backyard, sat there until finally they decided that they were going to move here and make this their home. Why? Why would somebody do that? That doesn't even make sense. Why? Because they found meaning. Meaning. And when the story of this church is written and the story of Relate Church, and it's got your names in it, is all written, it's not going to be some church where there was just sudden success, a story of how we started off because we had a great donation, a story because some church wanted to start a satellite church. It's none of that. It's a different church. It's a different story than that. You know, we're not here because the pastor was some great author that moved here, or some radio personality or TV personality that moved here, or some great orator that moved here and started a church and everybody just flocked to it. That's not our story. You see, this story is a story of passion, a story of danger, a story of high risk, a story of great adventure with attacks from the enemy, a story of great perseverance. It's a story of betrayal, a story that separated the people who wanted a true relationship with Jesus from those that just wanted to follow something that felt good. It's a story that separates those two kinds of people. It's a tragic story of loss, a tragic story of death. It's a story of faith, a story where people have been tried by fire and people who overcame by the blood of the Lamb and the word of their testimony. That's the story of this church. And this is the story that God invites you to be a part of in your life. He wants to take you from the humdrums of whatever you seem to be doing every day. It seems like you're just chasing the tail. And He wants to take you to a place of meaning and purpose. And all the stuff that you're struggling with, your health, your finances, your relationships. He wants to take you from that being just pain into a meaningful life. And Jesus said, give, and it will be given to you. Good measure. What's He saying? He's saying the Lord gives out good measure. And the more measure you give with all of your life, sowing good seed wherever you go, Isn't that a great picture? Jesus could have talked about how the wise farmer went out and he only found the good soil and sowed in that good soil. But he was like, the good farmer went out and he just sowed seed everywhere it went and trusted for the return. And he says, good measure, pressed down, shaken together, running over, will be poured into your lap. With the measure you use, it will be measured back to you. And the Apostle Paul wrote this, remember this, whoever sows sparingly will also reap sparingly, and whoever sows generously will also reap generously. If you are stingy with your friendship, don't expect others to be elaborate with their friendship back to you. If you're stingy in your marriage, don't expect your spouse to be fully giving in your marriage. Jerry, while we wrap it up, do you want to go get dressed and ready? Go get dressed and ready, buddy. You are? All right. Would you bow your heads then? What are you looking at in your life that you could be generous with? Could you be more generous with your time to your spouse or your family or your church family or a friend that just needs you? What has God given you? Talents, gifts? Are you being stingy with it? It's time to give it up. He who sows sparingly will also reap sparingly. Your future is in your hands. It's all your choice. This is a principle of the kingdom. It's sure to be true. God, we thank you so much that you have been so generous to us. You have sown seed into this world like nobody. You have been so gracious and kind and generous to us. And God, we just want to be a part of your return. Scripture talks about us being your inheritance. And so we give you all of ourselves to you. And God, I pray that you would show us how we can give ourselves even more to your message, to your kingdom. To be good in our relationships, good in our marriages, good with our kids, and good with our parents, and good with our fellow church members. Thank you for being so kind to us. And maybe you're here today and you don't know Jesus, and this is that opportunity for you to say, yeah, okay, God, I want to get to know who you are, what you like and what you don't like. I accept you as you are. I may not understand you yet, but I want to get to know you. And I want to accommodate for you living inside of me for the rest of my life. I want to love you, and I choose that today. Thank you, Jesus, for loving me. Thank you, Jesus.